understanding the new era of fires and wildfires. Seeing wildfires rage around the world feels a lot like watching climate change unfold. Fires have a way of making heat, an often invisible threat, intensely vivid. It's no coincidence then that the 13 consecutive months of new global heat records continue to fuel extraordinary wildfires all over the planet. In California, the Park Fire became the sixth largest in the state history after it grew to 12 times the size of San Francisco. My colleagues Austin Gaffney and Isabel Taft reported, and the writer says the fire was started by arson, but hot and dry weather had turned the forest into a tinderbox. It could now burn for weeks, if not months, and has the potential to become the largest fire in California's history. The Copernicus Atmosphere Monitoring Service, a research organization funded by the European Union, reported this month that fires in Canada were above average in some regions, and about 25,000 people had been evacuated from their homes when Jasper National Park in Alberta was burned by the biggest blaze it's experienced in a century. In Brazil, the Amazon has not seen this many fires in the first 6 months of the year in almost 2 decades. And Russia reported a 50% increase in area burned compared to last year, as immense blazes sent smoke above the Arctic Circle. And we're still in the middle of the summer. It's too early to tell how the final toll of this year's wildfires will compare to last year, 2023, when Canada's fires were more than 2 times as big as the previous record, and Greece experienced the European Union's largest wildfire ever documented. The interaction between human actions and the warming atmosphere that turns ecosystems into fuel makes it hard to draw precise global patterns about fires. There are too many variables. But it's already clear that the Earth's hottest months threw things out of whack around the world and helped fuel this year's wildfires. Today, I want to draw one on some of our recent coverage to explain the many ways in which the new age of wildfires is changing our understanding of how our planet's natural system works. Fires are hotter, bigger, and arriving earlier. Both the frequency and intensity of extreme wildfires have been more than double in the last 2 decades, according to the study Gaffney covered last month. Most of these more powerful fires happen in the temperate conifer forests of the United States and Canada, where extreme fire events increased by more than 11-fold, from 6 to 2003 to 67 in 2023, and the boreal forests that stretch across North America and Asia, where there was a 7.3-fold increase. The scientists to whom Gaffney spoke still plan to investigate what made these fires so extreme, but they already know their findings are consistent with the effects of climate change. Michael Folkowski, who manages the Wildlands Fires program at NASA, explained to me that hotter temperatures make the atmosphere thirsty, so it sucks up moisture out of the soil and vegetation. Drier forests are more flammable and fuel bigger wildfires, obviously. Fire season is also arriving earlier than expected in some places. In the beginning of the year, a time when the rainy season usually has started, the northern tip of the Amazon experienced a record number of wildfires. Fires are also happening in places that should be too wet to support them. Louisiana, one of the wettest places in the United States, was on fire last year. And now the panhandle of the world's largest tropical wetland between Brazil and Bolivia, Pantanal, is also experiencing a record number of fires, Pantanal. Climate is not the only factor. In any year, the unfortunate truth is that many fires that wreak havoc in forests are set by people, and that's almost always the case in the tropics, where farmers typically set fires to burn old pasture and foster new crops, and those fires can, of course, get out of control. But other kinds of human activity can also influence fire. The presence of roads around a forest can increase the likelihood of ignition and subsequently major wildfires. As my colleagues Ian Austin and Joshua Isai have shown, some types of logging can make forests more vulnerable to wildfires in Canada as well. Our food system can make fires more likely as well. In wetlands, agricultural activity can increase sedimentation, block streams, change water flow patterns, and make parts of ecosystems more vulnerable to fires. Amy Pickens, an assistant researcher, professor at University of Maryland, who monitors land cover, told me. But identifying larger fire trends can be tricky. Pickens said that accounting for both the climate variables and more direct human factors makes it harder to draw patterns across the world. And she said it's a mixture of natural and human causes. What can be done? The fact that humans are an important factor in a new area of larger and more intense fires also means we are not helpless. National governments can, of course, control climate change, but local policies can help too. Indonesia was expected to have a terrible fire season during these extremely hot months, but it did not. Some experts say the country's efforts to fight deforestation are part of the reason its forests were less vulnerable than expected. Fire suppression policies are a problem, Falkowski from NASA told me. Some government agencies in North America now accept that controlled fires, which have traditionally been used by indigenous people and which were long outlawed, can also help clear the forest of fuels so that wildfires are not so dangerous when they do break out. Infrastructure changes that make communities more resilient to fires, such as getting rid of nearby flammable trees and establishing evacuation routes, are also part of the answer. Fire is here to stay, Falkowski told me. We really have to learn to live with it rather than work against it. Ask climate. The electric car is a good are electric cars a good value? Electric cars cost more to buy than gasoline cars, and they may lose resale value more quickly. Even for people eager to own a car with no tailpipe emissions, it's reasonable to wonder whether it makes sense to buy one now. The answer may well be yes. There are a lot of factors to consider, like fuel savings and lower maintenance costs, many of which depend on your driving habits and how important it is to you to reduce your impact on the environment. And this is from Jack Ewing. Robots installing solar. Companies racing to build large solar farms across the United States are facing a growing problem. There's not enough workers, and now they're turning to robots for help. On Tuesday, AES Corporation, one of the country's biggest renewable energy companies, introduced a first-of-its-kind robot that can lug around and install 1,000 of heavy panels that typically make up a large solar array. AES said its robot, nicknamed Maximo, would ultimately be able to install solar panels twice as fast as humans can and at half the cost. Roughly the size of a pickup truck, Maximo has large extendable arms that use suction cups to pick up solar panels one by one and lay them neatly into rows using artificial intelligence and computer vision to position them properly, according to Brad Plummer. And more climate news. Global methane emissions are rising at the fastest rates in decades, according to a new study by The Guardian. Wildfires are contaminating drinking water, according to Washington Post. European clean energy companies are abandoning expansion plans or projecting slower sales in anticipation of Donald Trump's winning the November election, according to Reuters. And more than 350 prominent climate leaders have endorsed Kamala Harris for president, according to a letter obtained by the Washington Post. And this was here under the New York Times. It's on DNYUZ. Please leave your comments, and thank you for your support. Please support my Patreon account. The daily posts are 5 videos daily, and they are totally different from what I have on my YouTube channel. Thank you so much for your support and that you find all my content so interesting. You'll find the Patreon account details in the description box below.